We are back on London Real with a few more questions for Ben McLeish from the Zeitgeist Movement UK, and we had a lot of people asking questions. The one was how someone hooked up their local Zeitgeist area, and you just talked about, it's called the tzmchapter.org.
TZM chapters, yeah. If you just Google TZM chapters, you'll
find it, right? Mm-hmm. There's someone named Adrian Flavin who had a question about the Zeitgeist movie, and I don't know if you can answer this, but he said there's a part about religion where they talk about all the gods and civilizations that were similar in terms to stories to Jesus, I just wondered, what is your view on Christianity, and do you think that Jesus actually walked the earth? Well, I haven't watched the movies in full, so maybe you can explain what he's talking about.
I used to be a Christian, in the sense that as Glenn Wool would have it, that I was presented with one religion and I picked it. Right? It sort of fell away from me at the age of 18 when it just became irrelevant to my life. Just, it didn't matter anymore. I mean, if you
stop making sense.
Yeah, I mean, if any of the good values you consider to be good values anyway, so you do those. So why do you need to be referring them to a book? But I mean, if you want to talk about things like the astrotheological origins of Christianity, there's various different models. There's various different ways you can look at it. For example, if you talk about the historicity of Jesus, there is enough evidence, or at least some evidence, to suggest that an Egyptian sorcerer called Jehoshua ben Pandira, no relation, was tied to a tree and stoned to death in probably like 100 BC, somewhere around then, because of course in Egypt sorcery was evil too. And he seems to have been a pre-model for then the Jesus character. There's a historicity connection between those. And they feed through to the sort of Talmudic models, the Talmudic texts as well. It's all one big long story. It's not like Christianity starts here and then that's it, and then Buddhism starts here. It's all one big understanding, or at least attempt to understand our origins and how the earth works and all the rest of it. The first movie draws comparisons between the gods, for example, how they're all born around the winter solstice. The short form of which is December 25th. Of course, it's not always exactly that day. December didn't exist in Egyptian times, for example. But the idea that they're born and reborn, in fact, they're reborn again at Easter, so is Jesus. We forget that resurrection is rebirth. That's shared by Horus, it's shared by quite a few others as well. I mean, the old idea of virgin birth is no new thing either. Buddha being born through a slit in his mother's side. Yeah, there's a lot of that stuff. So, I mean, ultimately, how we try and appeal to the religious is that we say, look, all the things that you value, that you really value in life, are still going to be in the physical world. You still need clean water. You still abhor, I would think, war. If yours is to be a religion of peace, how could you ever inflict it by the sword? And isn't the whole point of a religion the unification of the globe? Not a centralization, but a sort of a brotherhood and sisterhood of man, as one gentleman once sang it.
Yeah, but religious people don't think like that. They think brotherhood and unification of the globe is great as long as it's unified under my doctrine.
Their own, exactly. And there you have to simply, I mean, what I try and not talk to religious people about this stuff this directly. I say, do you think that perhaps if you weren't born in, for example, Lebanon, or if you weren't born in Middle America, that you would still have these values? Do you not see that maybe it's extremely likely that you would have been raised a Muslim and therefore are a Muslim? Just like I was raised into a fairly Christian family and also grew up Christian in those senses. I just try and do it like that.
Okay.
But you don't want to say your religion is wrong. What we want to say is, look, there are certain things about our life that we have to fix anyway, no matter what you believe happens in the hereafter. And so I try and do it like that.
That's a good way to put it.
Here's another question is this from Tyne Weiss. He says, any thoughts on the false flag or the false flag event that happened at the Olympics meme on YouTube? I don't know what this is. Has me spooked. Can we instigate and accelerate the transition?
Yeah, so I haven't spent any time looking at this. There are people out there who are asserting with what they claim to be credible evidence that the private security firm that's looking after the Olympics is somehow going to be involved in or be co-opted by a false flag terror event.
Can you talk about what that means, a false flag terror event?
Okay, yeah, fair enough. A false flag is when an attack is made upon a nation that is seen to be or seems to be by another nation when it is in fact orchestrated by your own government. Now that sounds highly conspiratorial. There are some real-world examples that are absolutely proof now. Okay. For example, one of my favourites, because it's so horrific,
is 9/11.
No, I can't. You see, I can't. I have to remain on the fence about that. I don't have enough information on that at all to claim either way. But for example, the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which was what started off Vietnam, literally never happened.
Okay.
It literally never happened, and that's down in the public record as well.
It's been proven, right?
Yeah, and there was
This was the attacking of American naval vessels off the Gulf, and so that prompted the U.S. to get into the war.
Exactly.
Right,
So they use that as a pretext. There's another one which is the I've just forgotten it. Not Bretton Woods, Northwoods, Operation Northwoods.
What was that?
Which was a massive plan by the very high military command in the United States Army government, to, for example, fly a plane over Cuba and have it explode remotely, and then say that they had shot it down so you can invade Cuba.
Great idea.
Gas attacks on the population, so that they could essentially say, look at the enemy that we now have to fear. Now let's all get together and do that. Instead, wouldn't it be great if we declared the problems that face all of humanity as to be our common enemy? Instead, you know what? On one side we have hosepipe bans and we have flooding. Isn't the problem really that a very, very simple technological one, that we harvest that water as it falls so that we don't have water shortage? Isn't that worth having as a common enemy? Mm-hmm. Instead of saying, look, they blew this up and all this nonsense. But that's what a false flag essentially is.
And so there's one that's being rumored that's going to happen at the Olympics?
They say so, yeah.
Okay.
I can't really say more on that.
And then he said, how do we accelerate the transition? What do you say about that? Or what does he mean? How can we instigate and accelerate the transition?
So various ways of doing that, I suppose. One is the sort of educational aspect that I try and do, where I try and say, look, I do particular treatments on, for example, how the prison system works these days and how it might be able to work much better so we could be really tough on crime rather than just be tough on criminals, which is to be weak on crime, because then you make very dangerous people that you're going to release and all the rest of it. I do it that kind of way. I try and get people to discuss stuff. There are other people who, for example, do the sort of transition stuff. They do very direct sort of in-betweener societies that at least make it obvious that there is another way of living. Mm-hmm. There are people I know who work in universities and labs who are working on things like nanotechnology. They're going to be inherently part of what comes next. And then there's people who, a little bit like Anonymous, will go almost the sort of other route, or WikiLeaks, where they'll go, you know what, too many secrets, C-Tech astronomy, right? Just like in sneakers, and they go, bam, here's a load of stuff, just see how corrupt this is, just have a look, right? If you think it's all that great, and you've got any semblance of national pride, just look at how non-national and thoroughly corrupt it really is. There's that kind of thing that they can do as well. And of course, there's a reason why that's absolutely hated, and why Julian Assange has been living the life he has.
What do you think of Julian Assange?
I personally like the role that he actually plays. I mean, it's a shame that he made himself into such a figurehead, and I think he was probably forced to, in a way, by the way that the media interacts with an organisation. They want a leader, they want a mouthpiece. But I mean, if you read his book and if you decide to believe it, there is running through it an honest streak to that man. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done what he does. It is not rewarding. On one side, there was that wonderful meme that was on Facebook a while back. On one side, of Julian Assange, who takes data that's been hidden from you and makes it open and searchable, and actually runs very clever algorithms to remove people's names in certain places. They do that. They don't just shove it up online like that. And releases videos of attack helicopters murdering children and people in a war zone, completely illegally, unarmed people, including Reuters photographers, and goes, there you go, right? That's what you got, and puts it online for free. Doesn't make any money off it, as far as I can tell. He is paid. He does. Yeah, he takes money from the contribution, but ultimately the information is free at point of use for us. And he gets put in prison and has all those astonishing charges. They may prove to be true or false.
Not in prison.
Well, okay, yeah,
in
that's
the
true.
Ecuadorian embassy, isn't he?
Yeah, that's right. House arrest first, multiple court appearances, yes. But he gets involved in the judicial system, okay? And ultimately, who knows what will happen? It probably won't be very pretty. On the other side, you have Mark Zuckerberg, who harvests your data, uses it to make money, and gets $100 billion for it. So
I actually saw Julian interviewed on 60 Minutes, and I do like the guy. I think he's not a monster that they say he is. It makes me laugh, though, when he revealed all the diplomatic cables, and they're like, see, the U.S. isn't telling you what we really think about Saudi Arabia. I'm like, that's diplomacy. The U.S. has to say things.
Yeah,
they have to have a lot of things they can't tell the whole world.
But some people don't know that. Some people don't understand that.
Well, that there is diplomacy.
It's value. Yeah, they just think, it's not terribly clear for them.
I mean, Obama can't say, tonight we're going to go in and get bin Laden. We're going to get him tonight. We hope it works. I know that's an extreme example.
Yeah.
Another question from Wayne Garrett. He said, What ideas do you have regarding broadening the appeal of TMZ? And do you think that TMZ does enough in terms of highlighting solutions rather than focusing on problems?
Yeah, TMZ, man, those guys with their
I
gossip
did it.
stories. No, it says it.
I did it again.
It says it in his question. So the broadening of appeal is very interesting. This is why, for example, people have started street campaigns like the One Planet Project, which is essentially just a nice, easy template that people can say, okay, you know, let's get 3 or 4 people together. We've got a certain modus operandi where people come up, we can explain certain things, ask for their email address. If they're happy, they give it to us. Then we send them an email that has the links to what we talk about, and then that's it. We don't bother them again, right? That's a particular sort of project. There are things like the Media Festival. This year is the second Zeitgeist Media Festival. There's one in LA. There are sympathetic events worldwide, in as much as people can run them self-funded. Essentially,
Right.
it's very hard to do. But where we bring in people like Hyrosonic, the band, or James Cromwell, the actor.
Really?
Yeah. These people all have their own little projects where
Yeah.
they try and be, and we bring those together, and that actually automatically broadens the appeal. People like Rutger Hauer have been sympathetic to our movement for a very long time. Fear Factory came out. Miles Dyer's favourite band and mine. Fear Factory came out a couple of weeks ago and said, you know, we're fans of it. Keep doing what you do. This sort of broadens the appeal automatically, where people go, you know, we're now sort of getting into the area where famous people are going, this stuff's kind of good. Woody Harrelson made a film called Ethos, which deliberately uses Zeitgeist materials.
Okay.
He didn't make it; he was used in it. But you know, that sort of does it as well. I would not be a fan of deliberately trying to hunt down famous people to endorse you. That's not honest. They have to come to that conclusion by themselves. It's not at all okay to go around going, can we get you to put you on our site? No. They have to either come about it automatically or in a sort of non-coercive way. And the reason I say that is it was a deliberate doctrine of the Scientology movement to do that. There was a mandated letter by L. Ron Hubbard that said, we need to get the following people maybe involved so we can really get it like that. That's not what it's about. You don't force your way and you don't PR your way to the top.
What do you think of Scientology?
That's a long conversation.
Okay.
I don't have the legal funds to defend myself.
That was unfair of me to ask. I just wanted, we had Miles Dyer on the show 3 or 4 months ago, and he told us that he had to separate himself from the movement. I don't think in a bad way, but he just made a different movement. But can you explain why, or do you know, what's your interaction with Miles?
Well, first off, virtual high five to Miles. There you go. Put it on the screen, brother.
Thank you, Miles, for getting us, Ben, on. Was his suggestion.
So Miles had already, in his young, what's he, 26? Something like that.
Not even, I don't think.
I bet he's
Prodigy.
12. I bet you he's 12.
Prodigy.
He already switched onto this a long time ago before he heard of us. He had something called the Universal Solutions Project, which is essentially a giant wiki that would really help you understand the problems and solutions to everything. And he came to the Zeitgeist movement to try and sort of develop it, and a few people tried to help out, but I think he had a problem sort of getting it going. So he separated himself purely to focus on that project even more. But he sees us as a portal for people who give a shit, as he puts it.
Okay.
And that's fine. Look, I'm not at TZM meetings all the time, and I very much live almost a separate life to it. Yet I'm seen as some kind of, not leader, but like some prominent voice.
Sure,
But
extreme good looks, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Figurehead.
It's my awesome hairline and middle-aged spread. But you know, if I can end up looking like that to someone, it's only because I've gone and done my stuff, you know, and anybody can do that. What I do is not special. I'm not particularly clever. I'm not even particularly good at speaking publicly. And there are people who are 1,000 times better than me who have yet to feel the sort of coercion to do it, feel that sort of push to do it. Anybody can do it.
How many members are you worldwide? I know membership is probably hard to point your finger on.
Very tricky. We know from the views of the film that at least 50 million people know about things like the Venus Project. Mm-hmm. What is that membership? Is knowing at least about the system and membership? Not really, because some of them could disagree.
Okay.
Our newsletter subscriptions are around the 577,000 mark worldwide. Okay. Again, they could have duplicates, so maybe it's not that number. It's very tricky to sort of get that without paying fees or dues, and we don't have membership dues. It costs nothing. All of our stuff is deliberately free and has to be. I would probably say, I mean, from the last time that we had a look at the UK has about 25,000, 30,000 people who are in some way involved. Plus, I think there's a lot of sympathetic members, people who are just sympathetic to the ideas, and if it came up as a national debate, would be, in a position to say, actually, I do support this. I just haven't done so publicly, and but it's very hard to tell.
Last question: what is your interaction with the Venus Project?
At the moment, it's nothing, and it always was quite sparse. I mean, I've met Jacques and Roxanne, I would say probably 3 or 4 times. And that was lovely because it's so interesting to meet someone who's had such an
That's what
interesting
Miles
life.
said. He wouldn't stop talking about it. You met him in Florida?
No, I haven't yet. Although I am in Florida in January, I might see if I've got the time to pop over and say hi. They were always you've got to be eternally thankful to anybody who has provided you with the ground for a very new way of looking at society, and having done it in such a compelling way. At the same time, there's people like Buckminster Fuller who have also provided very much the same worldview as well, and of course those all interact because knowledge is serial, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Knowledge develops and is redeveloped and expanded as we go through everything. No one single person is right about everything. They are in the culmination of previous right people too, And
like Einstein said, he stood on the shoulders of giants.
Mm-hmm. That's right. I think it was Newton, but yeah. But then again, Einstein could have said it and been quoting Newton. So
there you go, misquoting geniuses again.
Right. Einstein stood on Newton's shoulders. He stood on the giants.
That's right. It's on our £2 coin, I think. I can see only so far because I stand on the shoulders of giants. That's right.
Wow.
That's cool.
Well, all right. That's our supplemental questions. So thanks so much for coming on, and thanks for answering those.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right.
Welcome to London, the city we come from. London town and we go play the Eden sound now. We go party all night long.
Sun is shining and you know we gonna feel good. Come on everybody, party in the neighborhood.